I want to thank Philanthrop's Review again for letting Devastator for us today in this review. I do want to point out a few engineering redesigns that makes Studio Series 86 Devastator superior to Unite Warrior Devastator. The first thing you'll notice right away is, of course, the height of this figure. No longer is he 18 inches tall compared to Unite Warrior Devastator. This guy barely stands under or a little over 12 inches, 13 inches, depending on how you want to position this toy when you have him on display. What you may notice also is that, unlike the other Devastator, the legs, first of all, are offset. What do I mean by that? Traditionally, Devastator, when you put them together, the leg would line up with Mixmaster's cement mixing mechanism here. In this case, as you can see, it's a little offside. It's not lined up with the rest of his leg, so the thigh section is a little bit offset compared to the rest of the robot or the leg component. You can see the same thing with Scrapper, but because he doesn't have this piece of purple component, it's not as noticeable. So that's the first thing you've noticed. And the reason why they did that is so that it gives room for Devastator to stand properly without having to make the legs or the waist a lot wider than it is, without compromising on the size and the design of Long Haul and this middle section, which is no longer part of Long Haul, but a separate piece in itself. The second thing you notice is that when I moved him, unlike Unite Warrior Devastator, he's a lot more sturdy, meaning that you don't have components that kind of like move off or wiggle off. It's because in this version, Hasbro and Takara had put the effort into making all the tabbing and all the slots and the positioning and all the ports a lot tighter than the previous version. And I'll illustrate that in a bit here. The problem is that this is not a perfect design, despite the fact that it looks better. On a functional level, there's some components that I personally think could have been better. As a non-parts former myself, I'm not a big fan of this chunk where the waist and the leg becomes a separate piece. But the justification is that ever since the first version of Devastator back in 1985, they also had a separate piece where it's connected to Long Haul, where he can connect to Mixmaster and Scrapper. Even though the fact that it's not as integrated as this, the idea of parts forming has always been with Transformers Combiners since G1. The second disadvantage I can tell you right now is, unlike the previous versions of Hook, the crane arm, like this piece right here, it does not extend. Even though it looks like it does not. It does pivot, but also, unlike the previous versions of Hook, it's not the crane cabin that does the turning, it's the actual crane arm that does the turning. So it's kind of cheaty there. But I guess this is a trade-off, because if you do not like the crane arm being on Devastator's shoulder, you can just simply take it off. Last but not least, on a functional level, and this is a personal nitpick, unlike the previous versions of Scavenger, the power shovel, he does not operate on a pivot that is connected to the treads. What they do instead is they use the waist piece of the robot form and use that as the pivot. And that waist also doubles as a shoulder joint for Scavenger. So as you can see right now, when I lift up the arm, it does not have a central pivoting point, unlike the previous Scavenger toys. Also, unlike the previous, Transformer power shovel toys, like say Grimlock and whatnot, they kind of use the same idea to kind of cheat around that, to give that turning point, while doubling as a robot waist when it's not in vehicle mode. So since I have Scavenger lift up, I'm gonna go back to the pros to why this version of Devastator is so much more stable compared to the previous Unite Warrior Devastator. Right away, you'll notice that where Scavenger's treads are you'll notice that one of his tread or the foot, depending on how you want to see it, is locked onto the other tread, the other side of the tread. And this actually makes a huge difference because instead of having these two pieces dangling independently and not tab onto anything, this piece here actually gives it a lot more stability when you move Devastator's right arm. Whereas Unite Warrior Devastator, it did not have this feature and it kind of flip-flops whenever you move the arm. Why is that important? Because very much like Unite Warrior Devastator, this version of Devastator also has the wing piece, the chest piece, tab onto the tread. So if you keep this stable and unmoving, the wing doesn't come off. So that's one of the major advantages of this version of Devastator compared to the previous version. So you're probably wondering, does this improvement also apply to Bone Crusher, his left arm? Yes, it does. So I'm gonna show you how that works. Now, because this is a lighter color plastic, you can see the improvement right away. So you can see very much like Scavenger, one of the tread or the foot is pegged onto the other tread. Now there is a panel where you flip down from the other tread where you can just flip up the foot and it locks in place. So very much like Scavenger, this guy isn't going anywhere when you're pivoting his arm or using his left arm articulation. At the same time, as you can see, it does not disturb the wing being tabbed onto Devastator. So kudos to Hasbro and Takara for coming up with this. You may have noticed one thing about this Devastator is that he does have the waist articulation compared to the previous versions of Devastator. And this is because of that cheaty piece I was talking to you about. But what you may not know is that for him to do that, you had to make sure the torso is locked in place properly. So one of the things that, one of the improvements made in this Devastator is that for long haul, the back piece, there are several tabbing points where it simply locks all the torso components, so that's hook and long haul, so that when there's like when you want to put him in a pose, it does not move at all. So even if you like kind of drop him or like put him down kind of like roughly like that, he would not come apart. Whereas the previous version, Unite Warrior Devastator, if I did what I just did, pieces of them would either come apart or just components would start falling out because of that reason. So I'm going to work backwards right now just to show everybody how this guy is so sturdy. So I'm going to start with the chest first. So the chest in itself, even though it doesn't look like it, there's at least 4 points of tabbing, okay? So the first point is, or the first and second point actually is, of course, the aforementioned treads. So if you look carefully, you see on the side, you have these 2 posts, and then you have the 2 slots on the treads. Same thing with the other side for Scavenger. So when you do that, it actually locks it in place. And then if you look at the way that when I flip this down, you see that on hook, on the crane side, on the left-hand side of the crane, when you fold them together, it forms another tabbing post, I guess you call it. And it corresponds to the slot that's on top of the wing here. So that's the third part where it tabs the wing. Last but not least, this bottom part, it slides onto Longhaw's, I guess like the front grill piece, for lack of a better word, and it locks it in place. So this forms the fourth piece, the fourth point of locking for Devastator's chest/wing piece. So this is actually a good indication of how much effort that Hasbro and Takara has put into this toy when they made the design on their drawing board. Now I'm going to take apart each of these components to just illustrate how well this is designed compared to the previous version. I'm going to start with Bone Crusher. So, as I said before, the first thing that they did was to lock this in place so that it doesn't move. But what they also done is, so very much like Unite Warrior Devastator, you pretty much just slide this piece out, okay? So, and when they lock that in there, right, they actually made it so that it is hard for you to just kind of take it out. So to take it out, you actually have to put a little arm elbow grease just to slide this slot out of this post. And the post is very much like Unite Warrior Devastator. It just comes out of Hook's crane cabin in the back, and it just slides into this slot right here. So to undo all of this engineering, what you have to do is you would have to unfold the leg, which locks onto this tread here, and then you just flip down this panel here, which would hide the locking mechanism in the treads. Okay, so going on, what you do is to transform him back to bulldozer mode, just remove the fist piece, and then you just fold this guy back down like so. Make sure that everything aligns up when you do so. And then you have this post right here that locks onto this slot in here. So when you do that, it makes the bulldozer a lot more stable than if we were just to leave it like floating free. So just give me a second, because there's also these tabs on a tread on the other side that goes into the slot here. Like that. So that's the left arm. This also holds on very well because of all the tabbing and post connections. So when you do this, the real challenge is to make sure everything lines up. All right. Now I'm going to put him aside. We'll go on to his right arm, Scavenger. Scavenger's design is very similar to Bone Crusher. So with Bone Crusher, what you have to do is you have to slide this up, slide out a slot, like so. Okay, and you'll notice that there's also a post on the right shoulder, which is also Hook's crane cabin on the front. Okay, same idea. You untab the foot, put the panel back in. Okay, take out the arm. Make sure it's aligned when you take it out so that it doesn't get caught in itself. Okay, so you'll see Scavenger's chest right there. So very much like Bone Crusher, all you have to do is just fold this up, fold it in. Okay, make sure you have a little slack here because this actually goes over the slot where Scavenger's arm mode would go into Hook. Make sure it just goes over the empty space with that tab. And then very similar to Bone Crusher, just make sure the treads goes in the tabs and the slots. You turn them around, put the power shovel out, and then you have Scavenger. Okay? Now, this is kind of tricky because for him to articulate, you would have to untab the leg in order for him to kind of move the shovel. This is actually what I meant by what I meant earlier by that. Even though it looks better compared to Unite Warrior Devastator, on a functional level, they have to make some sacrifices to make Devastator look more like the cartoon. So I'll put Scavenger aside. Now we go on to Hook. Now Hook, what they did for him to be connected to Long Haul, there are many points. And as I had mentioned earlier, they really went overboard just to make sure that he stays put, okay? So first of all, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the tab, fold it back in. That's all you have to do. Like, you know, there's no special panel that you have to lift up. You just have to push the post back in, all right? Now with the right arm, you would have to lift the cabin, fold the post in, make sure it aligns before you close the cabin. If you hear the snap, you did it right, right? The other thing you need to do is when you take Hook off of Long Haul, make sure that when you take it off, you lift it straight up. Because if it doesn't, you would put certain pieces on an angle and it would make disassembly a lot harder than it should be. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show you where all the tabs are. The first tab is right here, right where this shoulder connection is. This is actually Hook's foot, or his, more specifically, his left foot. This actually goes onto a tab on long haul's arm. So as you can see right here, this tab goes right underneath it. It's actually one of the reasons why this is so stable, is because all these little tabs makes it so that everything locks in place. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to untab. Second thing you want to untab is you want to kind of like lift this arm up. This is actually one of Hook's arms, his right arm, where there's also a very similar tab that's located on the side of his arm. So you want to make sure that when you untab it, this is kind of unhooked, if you pardon the pun. And then there's also another tab here, very similar to Devastator's right side, except in this case, it tabs directly onto Hook's left arm, right? So when you do that, just move that out of the way so that when you lift him out, it's a lot easier for you. So once you get to this step, all you have to do is just lift straight up, okay? And then, as you can see right now, there's a final tab that's a little tricky because it connects directly onto Hook's right foot. So this is not hard to disassemble. You just have to take it out, just like use a little elbow grease, not too hard though, and just yank it out. So when I take this out, you'll see the final pegging piece. So there's a peg on Hook's chest that connects onto long haul's this port here on top of the dump truck cabin. So you'll see that when you connect it, make sure everything's aligned. So you can see there's a tab set right here on the chimney of the dump truck. That's where it goes to. It goes to Hook's right foot. So this is another reason why this is so much sturdier compared to Unite Warrior Devastator, is because of this assembly. A lot of us, when we do posing, we typically move the arm, the waist, the head, and whatnot. So in the previous version, because of the lack of these tabbing systems, whenever you try to articulate and pose Devastator, he comes apart, and a lot of fans can attest to that. Hasbro, they heard our complaints, and it looks like what they did was they took all the problems and they solved it by adding these extra ports and pegs. So to complete his transformation back to a crane, just flip the post back into his chest. Okay. And then here, you have to untab Devastator's head. Okay. Like so. And as you can see, I kind of jumped the gun there. I lift up the panel a little bit here. You pretty much, when you lift the panel, recess his face so that when you fold the head back in, his face is looking like kind of like downwards, okay? And the reason why they did this is that you can actually hide the head when he's in crane mode, okay? So once you get to this step, make sure it is untabbed completely, okay? Make sure everything else is untabbed. And then once that's done, you push the neck back a little bit more. It's kind of like a double jointedness. If you can see that right here, there's two joints. So make sure it's double folded, okay? And then once everything's clear, untab the two halves. You'll see there's a slot and there's a peg. Unfold that, okay? Get the crane arm out of the way. And then you flip Devastator's head back a little bit. Now be careful here, because when you do that, everything has to be lined up, okay? If it's not lined up, the head just wouldn't go in. So once you do that, okay, just give me a sec. Gotta flip the head around, like turn it 180. And then once you have that, compact it into a ball shape like that. And this might take a little getting used to, because it's not perfect the first time around. So you just gotta kind of keep at it until you get it right, okay? And then you kind of like inch it in. Once you inch it in, double fold it. And once you double fold it right, you'll see that the neck piece and the head piece, where the face is, you'll kind of close up that gap. That's how you know you got this right, all right? And then all you have to do is just straighten out the arm on both ends, like that. Okay, make sure everything tabs in. Swing the crane arm back. Everything should lock in place. And that's how you do hook. Moving on to long haul. Now long haul, as I said before, he's kind of cheaty the way that he connects to Mixmaster and Scrapper. But the way that he's connected to hook, they completely re-engineered that. So there has been some sacrifices, yes, but at the same time, they made him a lot sturdier. And as I mentioned before, there's these extra tabs just to keep long haul in place when he's in Devastator mode. What these are, they're kind of like the heel spurs of long haul. So one of the things you want to do just before you disassemble long haul is you want to take these pieces out, like disconnect them, like so. You should hear a click when you do that, right? And then you just swing it back into his foot. You do the same thing with his other foot. Flip this back. And what that does is it actually frees up the legs now, okay? Now, to get long haul off of the assembly is simple. All you have to do is just, just pull it out. And this is tough because these wheels looks like it's part of long haul, but the only wheels that long haul has is these two, not this one. So just carefully lift them off and you'll see that this purple post goes into the empty slot where long haul's face is. Okay, this actually fits in pretty tightly because there's two pieces of plastic that guides it into these two slots here. And then there's also a tabbing mechanism in the back which wedges it in place by friction. So long haul is not going anywhere when you put him into this mode. So when you get him out of this mode, right, the rest is simple. You make sure that everything's lined up, make sure his leg is lined up, okay? Bring down the arm, like so. Fold the arms up like this, so that it's recessed back into his robot or his dump truck mode when he's not in robot mode. Okay, like that. And then go like so. Okay, just put it there for now. Okay, you want to make sure that when he's back in robot mode, everything's aligned. Now for this part, you have to unfold this, bring this back up. Once you have that, you fold it back together like so, okay? And then now, you tab the pieces on so that he stays on, like that. And then there you have it. You have long haul's dump truck mode. Moving on to the rest of the body here. So, as I said before, this piece is a different piece. It's an individual piece. Is not a robot that turns into another vehicle. It's just a leg torso piece. So to get that off, what you do is, for Scrapper, all you have to do is just separate the two halves on the top, like that. It takes a little getting used to because it is snapped on pretty tight. So you may have to try it a few times before it comes on or it comes off. So once you have that, right, make sure everything's lined up. And for Scrapper, it's easy because all you have to do is just close the legs like that. And all you have to do is take out this locking mechanism for the shovel. Okay, once you do that, you can extend the shovel, you can unfold the shovel like this, free it up. Okay, and then once you have that done, unclip the heel spurs / arms and rotate it like so. Okay, do the same thing on the other side. Like that. Bring down the power shovel. Just make sure everything locks in place before you do that. Hold on. Like that. And then clip and tab all the necessary pieces. Okay, bring down the shovel, and then you swing the payload or cabin around like that, and there you have it. You have Scrapper. For Mixmaster, same idea. Except in this case, he's a little easier than Scrapper to unhook. All you have to do is you open up the concrete mixer mechanism where you pour the concrete in, bring this out like so, and then you slide this piece out of the concrete mixer drum, and then all you have to do is just put everything kind of back the way it was, like so. Okay, now I'm going to take the gun off, which forms the toe. With Mixmaster, unlike the previous toys where you actually had to swing the entire cab on a 90-degree angle to form the foot, they did something really clever. And what they did was they just took the front part of the truck and have that swing up 90 degrees. And that's all you have to do. Now, here's the question. What do you do with this piece? It's obviously a piece where it doesn't really serve any function when a toy is not in Devastator mode. So what Hasbro did was they made this transformable as well. So what they did was they made it so that they made it compatible with long haul so that when he's in dump truck mode, you can haul this piece around. And I'll show you what they did. I'll transform him. And this is actually quite simple. You basically ball everything back together with this guy. So you unfold him, make everything kind of like flat out like so. Fold up the skirt part like that. And then you swing this around like this. Oh, sorry, no, my bad. And then you swing this down, and then you see these slots, it goes with the peg, so it locks it together like that. Okay? Once you have it at this point, you basically, as I said before, ball everything together like this. Okay? That's what you do. And to hook them up to long haul, you just separate the back a little bit. Okay, you see there's like this hole here, these holes, and then you see these little pig on a hitch here. Just connect it so that it forms that connection. And then you can haul them around like that. Okay, so on a functional level, they improved them a lot so that when he forms Devastator, he looks a lot better. But there's a lot of sacrifices made on the individual robots, especially when it comes to the aesthetic, where long haul should be the big guy, pretty much like the Unite Warrior version. They took that out and they made the lower half a separate piece. It depends on your mileage, but for me, I think this is kind of lazy engineering, but at the same time, I understand why they did that. Had they actually integrate this piece of long haul would be, again, very much like Unite Warrior Devastator. He would be a Voyager size, or an actual Voyager size robot, compared to like the other Constructicons that you see in front of you. So that's actually one of the things that I thought was clever, but not something that I would think of. But at the same time, I think they did a good job integrating the needs of the larger robot, despite having to make sacrifices for the smaller robots. And the other thing you may notice is that a lot of these robots, when it comes to their transformation, is very similar to Unite Warrior, Constructicon, and Devastator. I'll give you an example. So Scrapper, if you compare him to Unite Warrior, to his Unite Warrior version, he's not that different. So his arm transforms the same, his legs transform the same, right? Like there's not really anything different at this point. And when you put him like in his robot mode, the feet is a little different, just because like, you know, the way that he's engineered. But overall, right, the basic design isn't like that different. Just give me a sec here. And it should look familiar to you because the basic design is still the same. The only thing that's different is the way that the legs is folded up. And even then, that's not that different. Okay. And then you have like the little bit of, I guess, nuance differences, where the arms is transformed a little differently. But overall, I guess the transformation schema is still the same, almost identical to Unite Warrior Scrapper. The only thing that's noticeable is the way that his head is pulled out. So when he's tucked in like this, right, all you have to do is just take the head out by opening the chest and then flip it out. Okay, same thing with Scrapper, Hook, same thing with Scavenger, Bone Crusher, Hook, Long Haul, and Mixmaster. Mixmaster is a little different because with Mixmaster, Unite Warrior, they use a modern cement mixer as the base alt model, whereas this, they kind of use the same type of model they used for the G1 toy back in the 80s. Or more specifically, if you want to be technical, back in the 70s when the toy came out. So this is another toy that's massively different from the Unite Warrior Devastator, but I think for all of you who bought the new Devastator, these are the two things you're looking for. A more show accurate, more movie accurate Devastator, and a more movie accurate, more TV accurate Mixmaster. We'll continue on talking about this when we have the next discussion in comparison to Unite Warrior Devastator. Because there are, even though there are the differences that I've mentioned, there are some things about Unite Warrior Devastator that is a little better than this toy. If you like what you're watching, hit the subscribe button and follow us, and we'll do more of these as we go on.